Hello everyone, I'm FARMERSIM and welcome to the first in a series of videos I'm going to put together as a bit of a how-to guide on how to get started with one of my favourite and must-have mods for this game, Courseplay. Now this first video is going to be aimed particularly at those of you who are beginners to the mod, I guess, people who've never used it before, who would like to get a few helpful tips on how to get started and become familiar with the new menus that get put into the game as a result of having the mod, and essentially just how to get started with a few basic tips on how to plot the first course and how to get things running. So let's get into it. So the first thing for me to tell you is that Courseplay is a PC-only mod due to its use of scripts. It is available to download from the Giants mod hub. The current version that is available to download from there is version 7.3.0.0. The Courseplay developers do have their own GitHub repository page, and the version that is currently for release on there at the minute, at the time of this recording, is 7.3.1.2. I will put links in the video description below for both of those versions, the mod hub, Giants mod hub version, and the link to the GitHub repository page. I think you do have to sign up to GitHub in order to get it. I think I might be wrong with that, but so don't quote me on that. But there will be links in the video description below to both those sources. So, first and foremost, when you have downloaded Courseplay and got it installed into your game and activated it before you jump into the map, there was one menu that appears in the menu system that wasn't there before. So, jumping right in there now, and that is the Courseplay Global Settings page. As you can see there, highlighted with the familiar cog icon that we're probably used to, with the little CP there in the top left, meaning Courseplay. So, what do we have in front of us here? Hopefully relatively straightforward. I do have... Courseplay does have an expert mode, and for the purposes of this video I have deactivated it because you don't need it to get started with that. We'll go into that in a later video, no doubt. So, initially, I'm just going to concentrate on this top section here. We don't really need to worry about anything on here at the minute. This is exactly as the game has given it to us. So, as I say, hopefully relatively self-explanatory for all these settings. The top one here, Courseplay driver wages. This basically determines how much you're willing to pay your drivers. You can have it at maximum of 500%. If you're feeling super generous, you can drop that down to 250. By default, the game sets it at 100%. You can drop it down to 50%, or if you're feeling particularly skint or mean, you can have that set to 0%. We'll keep this at a 100% for the purposes of this video. We have the automatic repair section here. As it says here on the right, Courseplay driver automatically repairs while driving. Now, personally, the setting I always have this to is don't repair. So essentially, the Courseplay driver, as it's working away in the field in whatever vehicle you've set it off in, if you have it on don't repair, it won't cost you any money, essentially. If you have that set to 70%, for example, here, when the wear and tear, the damage of the vehicle drops below 70%, the Courseplay driver running the vehicle will charge money, basically, and keep it topped up to 70%. Likewise, for 25%, you can have it set to keep it healthy, in which case it will keep it at 100% essentially, and it still cost you money. But as I say, my personal preference is I always have that set to don't repair. The next section is fuel threshold. The driver will be released if the fuel percentage is less than XXX. So by default it's set to 5%, so as soon as the fuel tank drops to 5% or below, the driver will be released. So he will basically stop working, he will leave the vehicle, and it will be sat wherever it was left in the field with whatever percentage of fuel you've told it to stop at. Again, by default, personal preference here, I always have it set to 0%, because I always keep on top of keeping the vehicles fueled up and keep an eye on it before I jump it into a big job, as it were. So yeah, we'll have that set to 0%. The broken threshold is, again, hopefully relatively self-explanatory. The driver will be released if the vehicle or an implement is broken. 100% is off. So if we set that to 95% and the vehicle gets to a 95% damage status, the driver will be released. These two things kind of work together, I think, don't they? So you can work that out for yourself. But for the purposes of this video, getting started, we will keep that to 100%. The global settings here, it has a harvester setting for raining. Obviously, you don't really want to be harvesting crop in the rain because you'll lose yield. If this setting is active, then the harvester will wait for the rain to stop. If you deactivate it, it will do exactly that. It will carry on harvesting through the rain. And again, AI helper fruit destruction, we have that set to deactivated so that the AI helper will not destroy crops as it's driving around in the field. We have this section here for user settings. Obviously, as I say, expert mode is deactivated. This is everything here is exactly as the game sets it to as you on first install. Everything again here should be relatively self-explanatory. The one thing that is different here from when you first switch on Courseplay for the very first time, this show info text window will be activated. Now if we drop out of the menu for a second here, you will see in the top right hand corner of the screen there, you'll see that blue line, blue strip, Courseplay. This is again a personal preference. I've always preferred a relatively clutterless screen, so even though I have the HUD toggle turned off, that Courseplay thing doesn't go away. So you can control that by turning off the show info text window. So if we deactivate that, there you go, it's gone again. So again, personal preference. I've never really appreciated the purposes of that, so that blue strip. So, but again, personal preference, I always have that turned off. Right, so that's pretty much that, isn't it? We don't need to worry about touching anything else in here for now. As I said, this is a relatively beginner's guide in this video. So that's what you met with before you jumped into any vehicles. So let's now get ourselves into the combine harvester, and once we're in there, there will be a couple more menus that will appear that we will now take a look at. Right, now we're in the vehicle and we go back into the menus. We will see that we are now met with two more menus that were not here before. We previously just had this one, the global settings. We now have this one, the course manager section, and we have this one, the vehicle settings. So first and foremost, this one we're not going to go into any detail with whatsoever, because this particular section is to do with storing and saving saved courses, which we're not going to go into any detail with today. So we can, for the purposes of this, we can ignore it. You don't need to do anything with this to get started. So don't worry about that just now. We will cross this one in in a future video. The one we do want to have a look at is this one here, the Courseplay settings for the particular vehicle you're in. And that's, again, pretty easy to see. We have the vehicle icon with a cog and the CP in the top left. So we click on that. You are now met with a new section of settings. The basic settings for the vehicle that we're in. Now, the vehicle I'm in is it's an ideal 9, so hence why it just calls itself a 9 in brackets. Whatever vehicle you're sat in will be displayed between those brackets here at the top. So the basic settings, show course. Now this is a setting that you can change in here, or you can change it in the in-game HUD as well, which I will I'll point out here, so we can, for the purposes of this, moving on, we can forget about this one just now. Open HUD with mouse, again pretty self-explanatory. You use the right click button on your mouse to bring up the HUD. This is a personal preference again that I always have, so if we keep that to activated, and I'll show you how to bring up the HUD when we're in there, when we're out of this menu section. Only turning in the field. And again, the text on the right here, only turning in the field, not possible with all tools. This, now I've always assumed this means that if your vehicle needs to make a turn or turn around, it will do it within the boundaries of the field that it's currently in. I always have this set to activated, because I've used Courseplay across a variety of maps, you know, Court Farms, Calmsden Farm, tight-knit maps that have a lot of obstacles around us, very close to the outer perimeter of whatever field you might be in. If you are in a field like we have on this map here, which is a nice wide open, relatively unobstructed field perimeter, you can have that set to deactivated if you want, if you know that you've got the room to turn around outside the boundaries of the field. But again, as I say, for the purposes of this, for the purposes of Courseplay entirely, I always have that set to activated, so that if the vehicle you're in needs to plot a turn and turn around, it will always try to keep itself within the perimeter of the field. The tool settings, I can't say that I've ever had to alter these settings. So again, this is what the mod gives you as default, by raising tools early, lowering tools late, and an offset horizontal measurement of 0.00 meters. We're not going to touch any of these settings in here. So again, you can just leave them as they are. In this setting here, because we are in a combine harvester, it gives us the settings for a combine harvester. If we were in a tractor with a seeder or a planter, for example, the settings here we would see would be slightly different. So we will cross those settings again in a future video. For now, the same principles relate the same essentially with this. So whether we're in a combine harvester or in a vehicle with a cultivator or a plough, plotting a course and what we're going to do for the purposes of this video are going to be exactly the same. So as we're in a combine, again, I've never had to alter this setting, automatic cutter attach. Stop while unloading, I always have that as activated, and that's pretty much self-explanatory. When the combine is unloading and I'm driving the grain cart, the combine will stay still while it unloads into the trailer that I'm towing. If you have that set to deactivated, the combine will carry on moving, so to speak. Combine self-unload. Now again, this is something that will be included in probably the next video, as it is, well, again, self-explanatory. Combine self-unload. If you have a trailer, a lorry with a grain trailer, or a tractor with a grain cart behind it, parked on or near the field that you're currently harvesting, the combine, when it's full, can automatically recognize and locate that grain trailer and drive itself to it once it's full, empty into the grain trailer, and then make its way back to the point of the Courseplay course that it left at, and carry on working, which is very, very clever, I must admit. That's excellent stuff. But because of the way I've always used Courseplay and Autodrive, I've never used this variant, but we will show it in a future video. And straw swath, again, self-explanatory, enables or disables the straw swath, or only disables it on headlands. So you can disable it on headlands, you can deactivate it completely, or you can enable it. So we'll have that deactivated for now. And the vehicle debug settings, again, that's something I've never even had to touch. So hopefully that's a very simple and basic overview of the vehicle settings that you're met with once you've installed Courseplay. So what we can now do, we can jump out. We are currently sat in this lovely combine harvester, so we're going to start it up. Let's lift up that header, and the field we're going to be working on is the one in front of us. We have a field of wheat that is ready to harvest. So what I think I'm going to do, I'm going to drop the header down. I'm going to unfold the combine. Now you don't have to do this, Courseplay will do this for you as well, but for the purposes of even looking like I'm doing this correctly, we're going to turn on the header. We're going to cut our way into the field. Now again, like I said, you don't have to do this. This is just me kind of trying to do it properly for the purposes of this video. So we'll cut our way into the field here. We'll come to a stop. We can turn everything off. Let's pull ourselves back just a tiny little bit. And now we are going to plot a course. So in order to plot a course, now that we have our vehicle in the field that we're looking to work in, as you can see here, we have the harvester. We're in field 3. It's ready to harvest. You want to go to what is the active workers menu, shown by the steering wheel here on the left hand side. Once you're in here, you go down to create job, and that will bring up this menu here on the right hand side. Now, as this is the very first time on this game save that we're doing this in this harvester, this is the display that you're met with. Once we've plotted a course here and done what we need to do, and then later on down the line you want to then harvest this field here, for example, you won't have to do this setting. It will be exactly where you want it to be, which is here in the Courseplay fieldwork section. So this is what you're met with by default. If you go to the arrows here and click to your right, you will see we are now in the Courseplay fieldwork job section. And as you can see, Courseplay has very cleverly created a white boundary around the field that it has detected, which is extremely clever. So that obviously this is exactly what we want it to be. This is the field we want to work in. Courseplay has defined the field edges, and that's brilliant. And this is essentially the box that Courseplay is going to plot a course within. So once we've done that, once you've clicked on Courseplay fieldwork, the vehicle you're in has detected the field that we're wanting to work in. Now we're ready to go and plot the course. Now here we have this target position and the field position. For the purposes of this section, we don't need to worry about, we don't even need to consider these two boxes, or this one, as a matter of fact. What these two boxes relate to are, with Courseplay, you can plot a course in a field that the vehicle is not currently in. But again, I will show you how to do that. It's very simple. I'll show you how to do that in another video. That's getting a little bit more towards the advanced stages of things. So for now, we will leave it. Once you're in here, you've got this menu up. Courseplay has defined the field with the white border around the edge of the field. You then want to go down to here to the open close course generator box. So let's do that now. Now that we're in the course generator settings of the particular vehicle we are in, the first thing you can see here at the top, work width. Courseplay has very cleverly determined the width of the header that is on our combine harvester. Now, disclaimer, I've always found with quite a lot of tools that there can be a minor discrepancy between the vehicle widths. Now, the header that we have attached to this harvester is actually, according to the mod description and the details that you see when you go to purchase the particular header in the menus, is it's 12.2 meters wide. Courseplay has recognized it as 12 meters wide. Now, I always go with the lesser of the two measurements. If we were to plot a course at 12.2 meters as per what the header description says, and it's technically not 12.2 meters and is actually 12, we're going to lose 0.2 of a meter from the course plotting. So we don't want that. We want, if we have it as the lesser of the two, it basically won't miss any crop as it runs the course. So Courseplay's told us that the header is actually 12 meters, so we're going to go with 12 meters. The next box down is multiple tools. Now, we don't need to touch this box either today. This essentially relates to how many vehicles and things we have running in the field. If this field was pretty big and we were running 2, 3, 4, or a maximum of 5 harvesters, this is where we'd amend the details for that. So we're not going to do anything with that because we are running 1 harvester. Now, number of headlands. Again, relatively self-explanatory. This is how many headlands we would like this particular Courseplay course to have. So what we're going to do for the purposes of this demonstration, we are going to run 2 headlands. So if I click on 2, we now have a headland section here that's been brought up, and we'll go into that in a minute. Now, regarding headlands, Courseplay uses the width of the headlands, of all of your headlands combined, to turn the vehicle around. So if we only had 1 headland here, and the field had a lot of obstacles around the outside, like a fence or trees or rocks or any kind of obstacle whatsoever, buildings or anything, the width of the headland is what the vehicle, in this case the combine harvester and its header, would use to turn around. So I know from experience that having 1 headland on this field, I know that this field is fine anyway because there's very little obstacles around the outside. But if your particular field that you were working in did have a fence or trees or anything like that, or even 1 tree that's in a particularly close proximity to the border edge of the field, you will want to concentrate on how many headlands you put into the course. So for the purposes of this, we're going to have 2 headlands. So essentially the width of 2 headlands is what this vehicle is going to use to turn around in between up and down rows. I do hope that makes a little bit of sense. So as we have told it to do at least 1 headland, we now have a headland section to look at here. Now, because it's a combine harvester, you always start on the headlands first. If we had, for example, a windrower, and we were running a windrower here, we would start on the field center first. You would run the center up and down rows first, and then finish off on the headlands, so that you have a nice, neat windrow to pick up around the outside. The same can be also said, I believe, for a variety of implements. It's a preference I've started doing as well myself, running ploughs, cultivators, and seeders and such, doing the centre sections first, finishing off with the headlands. But again, forgive me for adding unnecessary complications to this description. We're running a harvester, so we run the headlands first. The headland corners. Now, this is how the Courseplay course plots itself regarding the corners, pretty much. Now, as you can see, the shape of the field behind the menu system here, fortunately you can still see it, we do have a sharp corner. We have this one here, we have this one here, and we have this one here. and I suppose this one here is probably considered sharp. If we left this headland corner section to smooth, the way that it would run the headlands that it plots out, it would essentially, if you follow my cursor here, it would run a headland all the way around here, and it would consider that it would plot this as smooth, so it would have a bit of a radius on it here, which means that when the harvester ran round this corner, it would miss a very small amount off the corner, and it would be the same here and potentially here as well. So for the purposes, if you have any field whatsoever, if any of the fields you're using for Courseplay have any kind of a sharp corner in, you want to set this headland corner section to sharp. If you have a nice round field or a nice smooth edged field, you can have it set to smooth. Now personally, I've never really noticed too much of a difference between having it set to round or smooth. I always just use smooth or sharp, depending on whether you have any corners. So for the purposes of this demonstration, this field has more than one sharp corner in, so we have this set to sharp, and I shall show you when we've plotted the course what that actually means. The field center. Now this defines how the vehicle will behave when it's working in the center of the field. You can have the field center set to up and down, you can have it set to a spiral, you can have it set to a racetrack, or you can have it set to lands. Now, again, personal preference. I've used Courseplay for the entirety of its existence with FS22 and a good chunk of FS19's existence as well. I have never really used anything but up and down. Now this might be personal preference, I suppose, or maybe if there's a particularly awkward shaped field, I don't know. I've never really come across any reason to use anything other than up and down. But in a future video, we will go into what that means and what that does. For the purposes of this and moving forward and just getting our first course plotted, we're going to keep it as the traditional up and down. So, next section, rows to skip. Hopefully, again, relatively self-explanatory. You can, before plotting the course, you can tell it whether you want to skip any rows. Now, the maximum you can have is 6. I have always, by default, my personal preference is always to go with 1, because what that does is it essentially allows whatever vehicle you're in, it gives it a bit more of a wider turning radius between rows. Now, with most vehicles, 0 will be fine. It will turn around, it will do its thing fine. It will be able to go from one row to the next. It will plot its route and be absolutely fine. There's no reason why you have to have it set to 1. But again, for me, it's personal preference. I've always done it with 1. If, for example, we were plotting a Courseplay course using a really, really big seeder convoy system. So, for example, if we had a big John Deere 9RX, we had a really, really big wide, like one of those super wide seeders or planters that has a toe behind seed auger with it. So it's a triple vehicle, it's a triple implement system. It's a huge articulated convoy that will require a huge amount of turning radius in order to get between one row and another. You would not have set to 0 because it will just tie itself in knots trying to get to the next up and down section. You would increase that to at least maybe 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 if you wanted to, just to allow it to go to do one row and then turn around without too much of a tight angle. So I do hope that's making even a little bit of sense. For the purposes of this, we were going to have it set to 1, and I'll show you what that looks like when the course has been plotted. Now, this section here, rows per land, we don't need to touch that because this is where you have, if you have the field center set to lands, here, it essentially divides the center of the field into chunks, termed lands, and you can then customize how many rows per chunk, per land you have. So, but we're not going to do that. As I say, for the purposes of this and getting started, we're going to keep it as up and down. We don't need to worry about that. And now the island bypass mode, again, hopefully relatively self-explanatory. You can leave it as circle. If the field that you're currently trying to work in has an island in the middle of it, regardless of what shape it is, Courseplay will recognize it. If it's not an actual arable field, Courseplay will recognize it and will plot a course around it. You can have that set to circle, simple, or no bypass at all if that was a completely flat island and you wanted to plow through it. If we were plotting a Courseplay course here with a plow, we could turn field creation on with that plow, set it to no bypass, and it will plow through that particular island, turning the whole thing into a field. Again, I hope that does make sense. By default, it puts it onto circle, so even though there isn't an island in this field, it doesn't matter. So we can just leave that as circle. So, okay, so we've got those settings set to where we want them to be for this particular harvester. So once you're happy with what you've got these numbers set to and the settings set to, you then click on Generate Fieldwork Course. So let's do that now. Okay, so we've generated the fieldwork course. As you can see, it does appear in the field behind the menus here. Now that that's been done, you can click on back, and it brings you back into this PDA here without the Courseplay course generator menu there. And as you can see, this is the course that Courseplay has plotted for us. It's given us 2 headlands because that's what we've told it to do, and these are the up and down rows. So let's now pop into the vehicle completely out of the menus. There we go. Now, as you can see, by default, we have the, let me just bring up my heads-up display here so I can show you what happens here. As you can see, the blue arrow that sits directly above the harvester, that is the start point, and the red stop sign there is quite simply where the Courseplay course is going to come to a finish. So, what you can do now is if you right-click with your mouse, it brings up the Courseplay heads-up display box here. Now, you're free to move this around the screen wherever you like, wherever you want to go. I have always stuck it in the center at the bottom somewhere. So, right, what does everything in this box mean? So, first and foremost, if you need to change any more settings, you can either go into the settings in the standard way, or you can click on, I mean, here it says 9, because for some reason that's just what what Courseplay is recognizing this vehicle as. You can click on it, and it will bring you straight to the vehicle settings for the particular vehicle you're in. Now, this I section, this I logo here, is essentially what waypoints of the course are visible. The yellow determines that it's the start-stop waypoints of the course. The blue gives the next available waypoints, which is it just plots the next few that you currently have ahead of you. So we haven't started yet, so we're at the start, and it's just plotted the first few. This is essentially showing you where it's going to go initially. If you highlight this eyeball as green, it will bring up the whole of the course. Now, as you can see there, you can see it right the way across the area of the field. This is the course that the harvester is going to follow. So, the next section here, nearest waypoint. This is where the vehicle is starting from. So, because we are starting from the very beginning, we click on that, and you have the option to go from first waypoint, last waypoint, or nearest waypoint. So for the purposes of this, we're going, because we haven't done any work in this field with this course yet, we're going to have it set to the first waypoint, so it will start from here. Even if your vehicle wasn't near the start point, say the combine was parked over here somewhere, it's clever enough that you can still have first waypoint set, and it will find its way to the first waypoint and switch on its header from there and start at the first waypoint. It's very clever like that. Say, for example, we'd got halfway round this course, for example, and we were somewhere over here or on any of these up and down rows. The waypoint that it refers to is each of these yellow nodes or orange nodes that are dotted all the way along the course. If we set this to nearest waypoint, that's exactly what it says on the tin. If you were to click on start, it will start from the nearest waypoint that is directly above and the center to the vehicle that you're in. And again, last waypoint here is, again, if we stopped the harvester halfway around this course and then removed it from the field and then brought it back into the field for whatever reason and just clicked play on its last waypoint, assuming it's still within the same game time that you're still playing, it will remember the last waypoint that it stopped at, and it will find its way to that last waypoint and carry on working. Again, it's very clever like that. But again, I suppose that is going into a bit too much detail for the purposes of this starter video. So we're going to click on first waypoint, and for the purposes of this, I'm going to keep the waypoints visible, and we very simply click on play. There, off you go. drops the header down, and off he goes. So, regarding the way we set up the corners in the menu. Now, because the corner that we are approaching us now isn't considered a sharp corner, it has plotted it as a smooth radius. So as you'll see, it's going to, there we go. Yes, it has missed one or two stalks there, but that's always going to be the case with Courseplay. You're very lucky if you can get it to not miss anything at all. It is possible, and again, those settings are going to be for a future episode. So, here we go. And as you can see there, $13 wage payment in the top right hand corner, because we have our wages set to 100%. You will see that payment incrementally leave your bank account as the course progresses. So, we are now approaching the first sharp corner. Had we kept the corner settings to smooth, this here, the course waypoint direction here, would have basically created a nice round radius here, and it would miss this entire section here. As it happens, we set it to sharp, so the combine will drive its way right up to the field edge. It will harvest everything that's there, which it has done. It will then reverse its way back a few feet, quite a few feet I think, and then what it will do, it will cut a section, it will drop the header, and it will cut a section into this existing piece of crop, as you see there. We'll let it do that, and again it should go right up to the field edge. There we go, and it will now reverse back, and it is now essentially planning on picking up this section of waypoint here to carry on forward. Hopefully it will do that just fine. There we go. Excellent stuff. Right. So that's now cracking on. Now essentially this will essentially carry on doing exactly that until the hopper of the harvester is full. So let's wait for that to happen. I'll pick you all back up in a matter of moments when the hopper of the harvester is at 100%, and I have jumped in our grain cart over there and tractor, and I'll show you pretty much how it behaves when it needs emptying. Right, so the harvester has come to a stop now because it is full and it needs emptying. Quite awkwardly, it has come to a stop right on a corner. While we just wait for the tarp to pull back on this trailer, as you can see here, what it has done slightly differently to its behaviour on the first headland. I'll just bring up my mouse cursor here. So it's come along here. It's got to the red point here, which determines that it's a sharp corner. It's harvested right up to that, and then it's reversed back. And then its plan was to carry on straight with the waypoints, but because it's at 95% full, which by default is its unload percentage, it's got halfway through this reverse manoeuvre and come to a stop. So, if we jump back to the grain cart here, what we should be able to do is just pull up to the harvester. See, it's already recognised that we're nearby because it's dropped its header down. So now we pull up here. It's now unloading into us, and because we have got the combine settings set to essentially stay still while it's unloading, it's staying still while it's unloading. So we'll wait for this to unload, which hopefully won't be more than a few seconds maybe. You can normally keep an eye on it by just hovering over the combine and just seeing how quickly the grain level is dropping. There we go, so it shouldn't be too long now. But when it's done, and I'm hoping I don't... There we go. It's off. Yeah, so it picks up from where it last left off, essentially. So it's now carrying on with the second headland. So that's excellent. It really is an excellent thing, Courseplay. Absolutely love this thing. So, we're going to let this crack on. We're going to let it finish the field. And once it has finished, I'll just essentially show you how effective it's been. Now, because we have the settings, because we have the expert mode switched off, there are a few settings in that expert mode that can allow you to, for example, if we just, it'll be quicker if I just, there we go. As you can see here, for example, it's missed this tiny bit, and this little bit here, and this little bit here, and you can just see one there that's on the outer edge of the second headland. There are ways of fine-tuning the course generator to enable it to stand more of a chance of getting everything, and I will show you how to do that in one of the next videos in this series. That does involve having the expert mode activated, and there are a few more settings that you can fine-tune in order to reduce the chances of this happening. But so in case any of you are wondering, oh, it's missed a few bits, it's rubbish. As I say, we can counteract that. Anyway, right. So we'll wait for the combine to finish the whole field, and hopefully there shouldn't be too many bits that it's missed. And then once it's done that bit, and we've gone over the whole field just to show you how effective it's been, we will then potentially just jump into a very quick example of using something different, like a plough or a cultivator. So, see you in a few moments. Just another quick pointer I wanted to make as I was waiting for this harvester to do the job. As you'll see, it's been working its way up this row. Now, it's pulled itself into the secondary row because by default, because we have the AI helper fruit destruction turned off, it won't destroy the fruit. So what it does is it does the up and down rows. I'm going to have to move out of the way actually, let it crack on. It pulls itself into the next row, and then as you see, it moves its way forward. Now, it was me who made that look a bit messy then. I'd left the tractor parked where it shouldn't have been. But yeah, as you'll see there, it's worked its way up in this direction, up this row. It got to it's needing to be emptied point here. It's then reversed back, and it's carved away into this row here, the next row, that it's going to do on its way back. This is one of the rows that we have the one row to skip setting, didn't we? So as you can see, that's what it looks like when you have it set to skip one row. So yeah, it pulls into the row in order to allow you to drive up to it and empty without destroying your crop if you have crop destruction turned on. So just another quick thing I thought I'd point out there while we wait for it to finish. Now, forgive me everyone, I just thought I'd jump back in very quickly just to point out another helpful pointer that I forgot to mention before. It's just a very helpful thing that Courseplay has along with it. If I move this into the centre of the screen so you can all see it clearly, it has a time left setting, which was something that was missed when Courseplay first came out for FS22. It was part of the Courseplay for FS19 for a long time, and it's something that everybody wanted back ASAP when it first came out for 22. But as you can see there, Courseplay is telling us that we have exactly 4 minutes and 29 seconds until this job is done. So I just wanted to point that out to you. It's a really helpful thing to have. Initially, when we first got started with this course, it told us it was about 20-25 minutes, I think it was, and it counts its way all the way down. So just something I wanted to point out. So, as I said before, and this time I will pick you up when the job is done. Right, job done. Courseplay course finished. And again, characteristics of what Courseplay does: when the driver is finished and it's got to the very last waypoint, it will switch itself off, it will fold itself up, assuming it's been emptied of course, which I did do, and essentially just sit there ready for you to interact with it and take it out the field and do whatever you need to do with it. So, quite frustratingly, it missed these two tiny little pieces of crop at the very end of the course there, which was a bit annoying. It did miss this little patch here, which was this is one of the outer edges of the inner headland, headland number 2, and there are a couple of points around the edge of the field where it has missed. Now, all is not lost. As I say, there is a setting in the expert mode which can allow you to combat that and deal with that as you see fit, and we will go into that in a future episode. There's a bit of a section here. It has a tendency to do that, especially when it's on its base settings. It's neither here nor there. But yeah, all in all, pretty accurate and pretty. I can't think of the word. Goodness me, what's the word? Yeah, it's good. It's done its job. And quite annoyingly as well, I suppose it would have had the combine picked up every single crop. If we jump into the tractor and just have a quick look at the at what's in the trailer, we've got 99%, 1,416.2 bushels off this field, 99%. Had it picked up every single crop, there's a strong chance that we would have actually had an exact 100% full grain cart here. And I have not emptied it. This is exactly what the combine has brought off the field, so pretty cool. Anyway, right, we need to get these things out the field, and I'm going to very quickly run through essentially the same process, but with a tractor and an implement. I think in this case we're just going to run a cultivator. So let's pull this out the field here. I'll just discard you there for now. We'll jump into the combine, pull this out the field, and I'll pick you back up in a few minutes' time when I've got myself another nice tractor and a cultivator. Now, I suppose while I'm here, actually very quickly, what I will show you, bringing up the HUD, we have this course here, which is essentially just at the minute, it's a temporary course. We haven't saved it, and we're not going to do anything like that in this episode. Once you are finished in a vehicle with a course, and you want to, for example, say we wanted to move on to another field and do another harvest job, what you need to do is, if you jump into the menus, and I suppose this is where we do need this actual section, so if you jump into the course manager here, you can see the option here for clear current course. So as we're not going to go into any of the bits for saving a course, we're just going to get rid of it. Once we clear that current course, as you'll see, the course we've just ran has disappeared. In the heads-up display here, it literally says no course. So we're now free to go and do the same again in another field with the harvester, but we're not going to do that. As I say, I'm going to get my hands on another tractor and a cultivator, and we're going to run in this field again. And I'll show you what it's like with a cultivator. Right, I've got myself a nice shiny new tractor and this lovely Horse cultivator from the Horse Aggravation Pack by Giants. It's a beautiful piece of kit. So we're essentially going to do the same thing as we did at the beginning with the combine harvester. We're going to jump into the active workers menu, and as you'll see, we're in the same position. Tractor's in the field. We want to create job and click right with the mouse over there. You can do it with your D-pad on your control pad if you use a control pad, but if you're just using mouse and keyboard, just click to the right there, and again, Courseplay has defined the edge of the field, as we know. So now we go into the Courseplay generator, click triangle, all that. So yeah, Courseplay has recognized that the width of the tool this time is 7.5 meters. Multiple tools, we're sticking with one. Number of headlands, we're going to stick with 2 headlands again for this one, because we do have the space around the outside of the field for this vehicle to turn around when it needs to. We're going to start work on, now in this case, what we're going to do differently is we're going to start work on the field center. So essentially, the Courseplay will plot the course, and it will start it on the up and down rows, as opposed to the headlands like we did with the combine. So, headland corners. Now, this is something I wanted to point out. You'll have to forgive me here. This is the first time I've done a tutorial video, so to speak. So there's so many things with Courseplay, it is a very detailed mod that, as I'm recording this segment of video, I've got a million things running through my head saying, oh, should I say this or should I say that? You know, but because this is a relatively beginner's level video, there's a lot of things I'm having to not include, but I am going to include this bit because I feel it is important, because if you were starting out on this, if you were following this video wanting to learn how to use the beginning sections of Courseplay, but your field had different characteristics around the outside, things might affect you here. So if we stick with the sharp corners here, as we did with the combine, so that when I'm going to plot the course. We're going to do one rotor skip up and down. Yep. Okay. So, but the only difference here essentially is we're going to be starting in the center. So we generate fieldwork course. Now, essentially, this almost looks exactly the same as the combine one, except it has a width of 7.5 meters instead of 12. So there are more up and down rows, and obviously the headlands are closer together because they're only 7.5 meters wide. The point I wanted to bring up is now, so that you can see the waypoints. Now I'm going to jump into construction mode, because while in construction mode you can still see all the waypoints that Courseplay plots. Now we're going to go over to the first corner that is considered sharp. Now, I'm going to do this here, so where do we do this? It's fences, isn't it? Right, so if we add a fence, let's just stick a fence there, and there, and there. Right, okay. Job done for the purposes of this bit. So, if we picture our tractor and cultivator here, now it's going to be starting on the up and down row, so initially it's not going to make a difference. But when it does come around to doing the headlands, and it performs the same characteristic as the combine did, i.e. it will run past the edge of the field. Now in this case, because it's a tow behind cultivator, the waypoint here, the red waypoint, it's following the cultivator, not the tractor. So the tractor will tow the cultivator right up here, and the tractor will essentially drive right up to about here, so that the cultivator cultivates right up to the edge of the field. But what have I just put in the way of that? I've just put a fence in the way of that, so it's not going to work. So this is where it's down to your discrepancy, I guess, depending on what map you're on and what you know is around the outside of your field. Sometimes the settings aren't going to work for that particular field. So we have these set to sharp corners, but we now know that, I know it's not going to be there, and I'm going to delete this in a moment, but if the field that you're working in has a sharp corner, but it has obstacles around the outside of the field, you're going to want to change that sharp corner characteristic to smooth, so that it will avoid crashing into the fence and stopping, if that makes any sense. So I just wanted to show you that, just for demonstration purposes only, of course. What we will do here, I will obviously, in fact we'll do it right now. We shall demolish this fence, so that the fence can crack on with the job that we've told it to do. There we go. I think that's all of them. Yep. Right. Let's jump out of construction mode. So, we're in the same spot on the field that we were with the combine at first, but our start point is in a completely different place. So, that doesn't matter. If we click on play, as you will see, Courseplay is clever enough to know where it's been told to start. So we're going to follow it on its journey to the start point, which I think is just over there. You can see where my mouse cursor is at the top of the screen there, drawing a bit of a circle around it. Yeah. So we shall follow it on its journey. It should get itself right up to it, and then it will unfold the tool and crack on with the job at hand. There we go. So it's going to line itself up. There we go. It's going to get itself roughly there. Now it is a bit of a tight circle, tight turning circle, I get that, but there we go. We are now cultivating, albeit in a different direction and a slightly different layout to what we did with the combine. But Courseplay is doing its thing. So I'm going to let this job carry on. I suppose for now I can show you the characteristics it does at the end of each row. It's recognised it's the end of each row, so it lifts the tool up. It'll reverse because it's trying to keep its turning radius within the confines of the field. So it will then find its next waypoint. It will line itself up, hopefully relatively tidily, and get itself relatively straight. There we go. And now it will reverse back to this waypoint here, and that's how it will behave on each up and down row. There we go. Excellent stuff. Right, I'm going to be quiet now for a moment or two. I'm going to let this crack on, and I shall pick you all back up when the job is finished, and we will see how effective it has been. Right, welcome back everybody. Job done. So the cultivator's finished in the field. I'm going to jump into... In fact, I can do it with Iron Man mode with this one, don't I? Because we don't need to worry about looking at the waypoints. So, as we fly around the field, we can see it has missed a couple of bits. Now, again, characteristics of the difference in tools, having a tow behind cultivator and not having the expert settings enabled. We can combat that. We can get around that, sorry, by altering a few settings, but we will be crossing that bridge in a future episode when we've activated the expert modes. So it has missed a couple of very tiny little bits. Do you know what? Forgive me. I'm just going to speed ourselves up here a bit so we're not dragging ourselves. There we go. So we've missed a couple of bits here at the beginning of one or two of the up and down rows. A couple of tiny little spots there. And again, this was the crop that was in the field before. I think it's alfalfa. For the purposes of this video, obviously I've easy dev'd wheat into this field so that we can work on it. But again, we can deal with these problems, these missing bits off the very edge of the field. We can deal with those with the correct settings. So all in all, apart from these several tiny little missed bits, it's not done too much of a bad job. I think you'd agree with me. As I say, all of these things can be dealt with, can be combated, can be dealt with. So let's come out of this. Let's turn off speedy mode and turn off flight mode very quickly. Bring up the heads-up display. Jump back into the vehicle. So yeah. So now, if we want to, as before, if we want to move on and do a different field, we can essentially just jump into the menu, jump to the Courseplay Course Manager section, and we can clear the current course. Boom. Done. There we go. Right, so let's pull this out of the field. Now, there was one thing that in my haste I forgot to mention in one of the previous clips. When you jump into a vehicle for the very first time, now this is prevalent regarding this tractor and the combine, for example. In fact, we'll demonstrate it. So let's stick with this, and let's for the purposes of this, let's just pretend that we had a different tool on this tractor. Let's just pretend we were now going to run a seeder. So we've removed that temporary course that we had, and now we were going to run a seeder. If we jump into the worker settings, the active workers, when we go to create job, we press X, boom. Like I mentioned before, it's automatically come back into the Courseplay fieldwork, which it will now always do that. It'll do it for the harvester, it'll do it for this tractor, it will do it for any vehicle that you get in and create a course for the first time. Once you've done that, it will bring up this section first. So we go into the Courseplay generator. The settings that we essentially put onto this tractor, for example, the number of headlands 2, the start work on centre, the sharp headland corners, the rows to skip 1. All of these settings will stay with this tractor now, regardless of what implement we have on the back. Courseplay is clever enough to recognise that if we had a 9-metre seeder behind us, for example, that work width will change and it will be at 9 metres, but our preference for how we want the Courseplay course to behave, like I said, the number of headlands, the start work on, the corner definitions, etc., 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 they will all stay the same. So you won't have to keep on amending these things every time you pull the same vehicle into a field. And it's not particular to this field. We can get into any other field and it will keep to those same settings for this tractor until you change them again, and then it will stay with those settings. So say we altered it to 3 headlands. Every time you put this tractor into a new field or the same field and came to bring up another course, it will stick with those settings. So, I think I've covered what I believe to be the absolute basics for how to get started with Courseplay. I do hope I haven't baffled anyone enough. I hope I've made sense. As I said previously, this is my first ever tutorial video, so I do hope I've done a half-decent job in essentially just guiding those of you who are absolute beginners to Courseplay in understanding how to make sense of the new menus and what to do with them and how to get started as quickly as possible with Courseplay and getting that automation running in your fields. So I do hope you've enjoyed the video, everyone. Thank you very much for your time watching. I hope you found it interesting and informative. If you're new to the channel and you like this stuff and you want to see more of it, hopefully within the coming weeks I am going to create a few more episodes of this Courseplay tutorial series, hopefully finishing off with a pretty detailed, well, probably heavily detailed, multiple combined or multiple implement field tractor work, running multiple things at the same time, potentially with a bit of auto drive involved as well, but I've got a bit of planning to do with that, haven't I? So Anyway, so yeah, thanks for watching everyone. I really hope you've enjoyed it, and I shall see you in the next episode.